are entering a realm between the hidden and forgotten, a slipstream caught between realities, a secret museum of the esoteric, the private library of shadows, all taking place in a world forged from mystery and caught between logic and myth. You are entering Parareality.
Hello, and welcome to the mysterious world of Parareality, a world that can only be found on the frequency between our reality and the reality that lies beyond it, just out of reach. A reality where everything unknown is a mystery. I'm Sandman, and I'm your host. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining me again in the secret bunker for another episode of Parareality. Tonight is the third and final episode of my summer series, Triangles of Death. In the first episode, I took us on a dive of the Devil's Triangle, just off the coast of Japan. The Devil's Triangle is the home of many mysterious disappearances, sunken ships, strange lights in the sky, and is responsible for hundreds of deaths. In the previous episode, I took us on a trek through the Bridgewater Triangle, a 200 square mile area in Massachusetts. Though it's landlocked, it's home of a mysterious swamp that's said to be haunted by the local Native American tribe, the Wampanoags. This Triangle of Death is also the location of mysterious disappearances, strange lights in the sky, UFO sightings, hauntings, and it's also responsible for the deaths of many. So tonight, to wrap up this Triangle of Death trilogy, I'll be winding the series down by taking us on an exploration of the Lake Michigan Triangle. This Triangle of Death isn't as widely known on a global scale like, say, the Bermuda Triangle, but its history is just as full of the bizarre and the unexplained as any place on Earth. Though each location is slightly different from each other, they all seem to have a common ground of ghosts, hauntings, UFO sightings, disappearances, and death. And I'm speaking of these triangles of death, as I call them. They all seem to have those things in common. But the one thing that I've noticed that seems to tie all of these triangles of death together is water. So does the water in and around these areas have something to do with all of the strange events happening in them? Well, that might be something we want to take a look at in a future episode. I got to do a lot more research on it before I'm ready to present that to you. And as always, to learn more about these triangles of death, you'll have to tune in, and find out. Hey guys, are you a Star Wars fan? Have you ever wanted to own your own lightsaber but found they were just too expensive or the affordable ones were too cheap of a quality? Well, I've got the solution for you. Saber Masters is the perfect blend of affordability and quality. I actually own a couple of these lightsabers, and I can testify as to just how good they really are. The hilts are made from high-grade aircraft aluminum and include a polycarbonate blade with infinite color choices for you to choose from, giving you the perfect accessory to your Jedi or Sith cosplay. You also get 16 sound fonts and 3 volume levels. Have the ultimate saber duel with flash on clash, blaster sound, lock-up loop, and many more sound effects. Your lightsaber will come with a free 1-year warranty and 3-day quick shipping. Whether you're a Padawan learner picking up your first saber or a Jedi Master expanding your collection, each Saber Master is a masterful recreation of the real deal. With Saber Masters, you're not only just buying a piece of merchandise, you're claiming a slice of the Star Wars universe for yourself. Order yours today by going to sabermasters.com and using the code SEAN21196 for $10 off your first order. Once again, that's SEAN21196. Sean is spelled S-E-A-N. That's S-E-A-N 21196 for $10 off of your first order. Or you can go to my website, parareality.com, click on the Partnerships tab and complete your order from there. But don't forget to use the code SEAN21196 for $10 off your first order. That code once again is SEAN21196 for $10 off your first order. Parareality is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. For more information or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcast.com.
Broadcast from a secret bunker somewhere outside of Nashville, Tennessee. This is the award-winning podcast, Parareality.
Just like the Devil's Triangle and the Bridgewater Triangle, there's another triangle-shaped area that has a reputation for the bizarre. It's known as the Lake Michigan Triangle. Although it's relatively unknown on a global scale, especially when you compare it to like the Bermuda Triangle, it does have a storied history of the unexplained, just like the other triangles of death that I've spoken about earlier. Stretching from Ludington to Benton Harbor, Michigan, and to Manitowoc, Wisconsin, the Lake Michigan Triangle has inspired numerous accounts of activity that are difficult to explain by rational thought. The mystery began all the way back in 1891 when a schooner named the Thomas Hume set off across the lake to pick up some lumber. And basically almost overnight, in a torrent of wind, the Thomas Hume disappeared along with its entire crew, which consisted of 7 sailors. The wooden boat was never found despite an extensive search of the area. That search failed to even recover one single piece of driftwood. It was like it just vanished off of the face of the earth. From dancing lights in the skies above it to a cryptic underwater Stonehenge under its waters, the Lake Michigan Triangle is steeped in aquatic oddities. It's enough to rival even those of the Bridgewater and Devil's Triangles that I talked about in my first 2 episodes of this series. But what's the real story behind this dubbed Lake Michigan Triangle, the Great Lakes' claim to paranormal fame? Is it all just smoke and mirrors? Or, like the lake itself, something with a bit more depth to it? Well, as I always say, you'll have to tune in and find out, and that's exactly what we're going to do now, is find out. So we start with some mysterious monoliths here. So then there's what is an attempt to locate some shipwrecks made by a professor of archaeology named Mark Hawley and his colleague Brian Abbott. And they conducted a sonar search of Lake Michigan in 2007, specifically the Lake Michigan Triangle area back in 2007. And they found a row of stones set in a configuration that really resembled Stonehenge a lot. And this was in around 40 feet of water. And when they dove down to take pictures of the area, they discovered what appeared to be a prehistoric mastodon carving next to this row of stones. And this dates back to more than 12,000 years ago. Now, the precise location of this isn't known, and the site hasn't been verified as far as I know right now. But similar to Stonehenge, little is known about the purpose of this thoughtfully placed underwater stones or who put them there. Now, some people say that the mastodon carving is just pareidolia, that is something that we're looking for something and we see it. It's the power of suggestion. But I've seen pictures of it, and it does appear to be some sort of mastodon or other large elephant-like creature. Other unique features have been found in the lake too, like cars, boats, a Civil War pier, and even another stone circle that's close to a place called Beaver Island. Some believe that locals placed the stones there a long time ago when the lake was just a dry lake bed. And while this theory is plausible, local Native American lore, for example, speaks of meetings over a stone calendar. So you can speculate that when it comes to determining the origins of these stones, the strange activity in the skies above Lake Michigan might tempt someone with a truly out-of-this-world experience. And speaking of out-of-this-world experiences, UFOs have also been sighted in the Lake Michigan Triangle. Interestingly enough, Michigan ranks among the top locations in the United States for UFO sightings, with Lake Michigan reportedly witnessing a significant number of these phenomena. For instance, not too long ago, residents in the Milwaukee area were taken aback by what appeared to be a swarm of glowing white lights that were weaving through the early morning skies above the Lake Michigan Triangle. Some people thought that these were fireworks, and other people said, no, these are drones. Still others said they were seagulls illuminated by the city lights below. And of course, there were those who thought they were aliens and UFOs. However, this spectacle was so peculiar, almost otherworldly, that many people found it difficult to completely just to dismiss these extraterrestrial theories. There could be something to these UFOs and these lights that are sighted above Lake Michigan Triangle. After all, UFO is unidentified flying object. More, the correct term, I guess, would be UAP, unexplained aerial phenomenon, which actually does kind of fit into this sighting more appropriately than the term UFO. So you have something that's in the sky. It's a bright light, but you can't identify what it is. So it definitely fits into the UAP category. Not going to say that it's an extraterrestrial thing, but it is an unexplained phenomena that's in the air. So it definitely fits the UAP category. Now, while this recent sighting, or whatever you want to call it, is notable, it's far from the first. Manitowoc, for example, has had a long-standing fascination with space and the objects that descend from it, especially since part of this Sputnik 4 spacecraft landed on the lake shore in that town all the way back in 1962, and it left behind a strange green glow. As a matter of fact, today the town hosts its annual Sputnik Fest. That's right, Sputnik Fest, and it celebrates its connection to the space age and a growing interest in the extraterrestrial. So therefore, it's not surprising that UFOs have been reported in the area for several decades, or that the alleged western point of the Lake Michigan Triangle is located right along Manitowoc's shore. Now, we also have missing ships in the Lake Michigan Triangle, and this triangle, this area of Lake Michigan, has been associated with a number of unexplained disappearances, much like its more famous counterpart, the Bermuda Triangle. The first known disappearance was way back in 1679. The powerful commerce ship Le Griffon set out on her inaugural journey in an attempt to increase the fur trade to China and Japan. And the ship planned to cruise the Great Lakes to find the fastest northwest path to the Far East. However, the ship never managed to cross the frigid waters of Lake Michigan. It completely vanished from sight within the boundaries of the Lake Michigan Triangle. Although it's often believed that it sank to the bottom of the lake, no remnants of the wrecked cargo or crew have ever been found. Another incident occurred just before Halloween in 1921, when the Rosabelle was discovered adrift and seemingly destroyed after some sort of collision. Yet neither the crew nor the other ship involved were ever located. Another mysterious disappearance took place in 1937, involving the freighter O.M. McFarland. After successfully navigating the icy Mackinac Straits, Captain George Donner retired to his cabin for the evening and instructed his crew to wake him when they were nearing their destination. However, when the crew went to wake him up, they found that he had completely vanished without a trace, leaving behind a closed door and no signs of his whereabouts. Vessels have commonly vanished from sight, including the Thomas Hume schooner back in 1891, the disappearance of a ship, especially under seemingly favorable weather conditions after departing from the shores of Chicago, sparked widespread discussion. The mystery surrounding the triangle might have a more definitive explanation, though, considering the numerous shipwrecks that litter the Great Lakes, making it kind of akin to, finding a needle in a haystack to locate a specific vessel, a specific ship within the depths. A ship could remain labeled as having been disappeared for an extended period, only to be discovered much later, as was the case with the Hume in 2006. We also have missing aircraft. One of the most interesting stories to me is the disappearance of pilot Randall Diplold and passenger Emmanuel Z.E.Z. Manos, who was the president of the Detroit Salt Company. In May of 2019, they were on one of their regular flights from Monroe to the Upper Peninsula when the engine failed. The U.S. Coast Guard was immediately notified and went to search for the plane. However, rescuers couldn't find any trace of it. The plane's emergency location transmitting device did not activate. It's suggested, or it's just assumed, I guess, that Diplold landed the plane so gently on the surface that the device wasn't triggered. But we don't know exactly what happened. But we do know that both men and the plane are gone, vanished without a trace. Another wild incident was in 1953 when a U.S. jet went out to investigate an unidentified object in restricted airspace over Lake Superior. Radar operators watched as the jet got closer to the object, and then the two blips, meaning the two ships, converged into one. Then the jet disappeared from the radar, and the unidentified object veered off and vanished, and no wreckage or signs of the pilots were ever found. And the Air Force flip-flopped on their explanation as to what happened, but a lot of people suspect that it was some sort of UFO or UAP. On Friday, June the 23rd, 1950, Northwest Airlines Flight 2501, operating with a DC-4, departed New York's LaGuardia Airport at 8:30 in the evening and headed west to Seattle, Washington, with planned stops in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Spokane, Washington. Captain Robert C. Lind served as a pilot with the first officer Vern F. Wolf and Bonnie Ann Feldman as the chief stewardess. There were 55 passengers. That included 27 women, 22 men, and 6 children. Before takeoff, Captain Lind was advised of thunderstorms over Lake Michigan, but other planes didn't report severe turbulence, and the flight was cleared for takeoff. Now, at various points in the flight, Lind was directed to a lower altitude to maintain clearance with some of these other flights that were passing through. And as the DC-4 passed over Battle Creek, Michigan at about 11:51 Eastern Time, he was flying at about 3,500 feet. It entered a storm front, and Captain Lind notified Northwest Air Traffic Control Center at Chicago, radioed in that he estimated he would pass over Milwaukee 46 minutes from the time he radioed in. His course was due across Lake Michigan in Air Corridor Red 57, which runs from Glen, Michigan on a northeastern course towards Milwaukee and Minneapolis. At the time, however, a squall line had developed earlier that afternoon, and it reached the region of Lake Michigan Triangle. And by midnight, the squall line was raging south down the lake. There was a lot of lightning, and the winds were whipping up the lake surface. And so it was a little bit worse than what they were expecting it to be or have been told that it was. And although it's unclear what Captain Lind did when he reached the lakeshore and inevitably saw or maybe even felt the storm at around 12:13 a.m. Eastern Time, when he was in the vicinity of Benton Harbor, Michigan, which is, now that's 20 miles south of Airway Red 57. Lynn requested a descent to 2,500 feet, but didn't indicate his reason for the request. An air traffic controlman denied the altitude change due to other traffic in the area, and that was the last communication that anyone ever heard from Flight 2501. So when it started to get light outside as the dawn burst over the horizon, it became clear that Flight 2501 had gone down, probably somewhere in Lake Michigan. Initially, an oil slick was spotted near Milwaukee, and that led authorities to believe that it crashed there until a commercial fisherman encountered a large floating field of debris off South Haven, Michigan. That got the Coast Guard and the Navy involved, and they mounted a rescue operation off of South Haven, but they soon realized that no one had survived. Instead, Coast Guard crewmen began recovering floating debris, and city and state authorities began recovering debris that was washing ashore, and the Navy began searching for submerged wreckage. But after 5 days, the search ended with the authorities declaring that they had been unable to locate anything, no crash site, no nothing. So with the loss of all of these 50-something people, this had become the worst aviation accident in U.S. history at that time. And we still, to this day, don't know what happened to all those people. Speaking of that, the Lake Michigan Triangle is responsible for a lot of missing people. Individuals on and around the Lake Michigan Triangle aren't immune from this eerie grasp that this thing has on them. One of the more dubious disappearances occurred near the Lake Michigan Triangle in 1978. A man, you've probably heard about this, his name was Stephen Kubacki. He was 23 years old at the time, and he was a student at Hope College in Holland, Michigan. And around campus, he was regarded as a bright young man who tended to be a bit more free-spirited than his peers at this rather conservative school. And in his free time, Kubacki was an avid outdoorsman. Earlier in his collegiate studies, he had traveled abroad and hiked mountains in Europe. I mean, he liked to get out and do things. And he also enjoyed cross-country skiing around Lake Michigan. So he was always outdoors doing something. So in February of that year, he decided to go on a solo cross-country skiing trip in the same southeastern border region of Lake Michigan. But what was supposed to be a 1 or 2 day trip abruptly turned into a mysterious 15-month disappearance. So Kubacki's trip began near a town named, and I'm probably going to just totally screw this up, Saugatuck on February the 20th. Then the very next day, a few snowmobilers found an abandoned backpack and a pair of skis. So they reported their findings to authorities because they're like, this is really unusual to find this out here. And it was like, maybe there's a person, that has gone missing here or something dubious has happened. So upon inspection of the backpack's contents, the authorities concluded that the items had belonged to Stephen Kubacki. And this prompted a search and rescue mission to begin, in which investigators discovered a 200-yard footprint trail in the snow. The trail led past the edge of Lake Michigan before suddenly just abruptly ending. At that point, the investigators were pushed to believe that Kubacki had probably fallen through some ice and just froze to death, drowned, died. However, on the evening of May 5th, 1979, Kubacki reportedly woke up in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. This was over a year after he had seemingly just vanished, died, and it was about 700 miles east of where his disappearance took place. He claimed to have awoken, and I used my air quotes there, wearing clothes he had never seen before and with a backpack stuffed with maps. And according to the backpack's contents, Kubacki had apparently traveled to San Francisco, Sacramento, Reno, Utah, and Chicago. And additionally, he had new glasses, new shoes, and $40 worth of cash on him. What's even more bizarre here is that Kubacki had absolutely no memory of what had transpired over the past 15 months. In fact, he didn't even realize just how much time had passed until he bought a local newspaper and saw the date that was printed on it. Now, afterwards, when he came to realize all this and he kind of was getting his faculties to him, he realized that his aunt's house was about 20 miles away in Great Barrington. So he just made his way over there. And even after reuniting with his family, the only thing that Kubacki could remember was feeling cold and frightened of getting lost in the dark the day that he set out to go skiing. Now, this unbelievable story pushed a lot of people to conclude that Kubacki had not been healthy or had been in some sort of unstable state of mind. There is a thing called like a fugue state where you just, the stress level is so high on you that you, for lack of a better word, you just kind of mentally snap and you go off and you do these things, live a normal life, but you forget everything where you came from. You forget a whole bunch of stuff, basically your whole entire life. And it's not even uncommon for people to make up new personas for themselves and to live a seemingly normal life as a completely different person until whatever happens in their brain snaps them back into their old reality or their old state of mind. It's a very rare thing. It's like, amnesia, like you see on the movies or in the soap operas on TV or whatever. Some dude falls and hits their head, and he wakes up, he doesn't remember who he is or where he came from, and no one around him knows him, so he goes off and he lives some sort of life. I don't have any ID or anything like that, so he just makes up something, and then one day, years later or months later, maybe he hits his head again and now he remembers everything. Stuff like that does happen, but it's very rare. This fugue state thing, it happens. There's documented cases of it happening, but it's very rare. However, Kubacki has disputed any type of speculations that he was mentally ill and explained that everything in his life had been coming together right before his disappearance. There was no stress. There was no nothing bad had happened to him. Everything was going great. As a matter of fact, he said, and I'm quoting here, "My father was going to sign over the house to me. I had 3 courses at school and no trouble. I left a romance in Germany. There was no trouble with girls. I had a job lined up with the Holland Sentinel newspaper." So, he had broken up with someone in Germany, but there was no sadness about it. It was something that was very positive in his life. It wasn't like a bad breakup. I'm going back to the States. We can't be together anymore type deal. Nonetheless, what happened? Just exactly what happened to Kubacki has remained just an unanswered question for decades now. He's gone on to write a book entitled Meta-Mathematical Foundations of Existence, Gödel Quantum, God and Beyond. So he's a smart guy. He's got a PhD, and he's a practicing psychologist living in the Pacific Northwest. So he's a smart guy. He claims, and it apparently is, goes along with what he's claiming, that there was nothing bad going on in his life to cause him to snap and go into some sort of fugue state. There's no evidence that, I got hit in the head and now I've got amnesia, or maybe the ice broke and I got really, really super cold, and when I came out of it, I had amnesia. There's nothing weird like that. But however, unfortunately, he's refused to really talk about his disappearance with anybody for decades. Kubaki's ex-wife did the same thing, and his parents, who had previously spent thousands of dollars on a private investigator following their son's disappearance, who have since passed away, they have never really said anything. So, kudos to the family for respecting his wishes, like his ex-wife and his parents. I mean, he's like, I don't want to talk about it. Don't tell anybody about it. Maybe he didn't even tell them what happened. Maybe because he doesn't know. I have no idea. So precisely what happened in 1978, we don't know. And if Kubaki knows more than he revealed to the public, and that will probably likely remain a strange, unanswered question for years to come if we ever get any explanation out of what happened. Probably one of the more famous cases, that and Flight 2501, probably one of the two most famous cases to come out of the Lake Michigan Triangle. But Kubaki's is just an absolute fascinating thing. I personally think that he had some sort of fugue state moment, and I don't know why. Who knows? He may not even know why. Does he even remember what happened, what he did within the 15 months where he was supposedly missing? If he does, no one knows. He hasn't said anything about it. Was this all a hoax? That's certainly been speculated as well, that it was all a hoax for whatever reason, but he had no reason to pull off a hoax like that. Like, he wasn't in debt. There was no, the mob wasn't looking for him. He wasn't mentally unstable. He didn't feel like he had to have a lot of attention or anything like that. So we don't really know what in the heck happened. Only one person does, maybe, and that's Stephen Kubaki, and he ain't talking. So in conclusion here, we got a short episode tonight, sorry. But in conclusion here, the paranormal events in the Lake Michigan Triangle involve shipwrecks, plane crashes, and UFO sightings, and they're all connected due to one thing: lack of explanation. The many strange events surrounding this triangle of Lake Michigan have no clear connection, though one could certainly construct a case to account for each one. Still, as the coincidences increase and the shadows get closer, this story's uncanny quality cannot be denied. A lot of interesting stories have come out of that region of Lake Michigan. No one knows why. Even now, experts still don't have any answers, not for this triangle of death or any of the others that I've talked about in the series, or for any triangle of death for that matter. H.P. Lovecraft once said, "We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far." Maybe he was right. Maybe there are places on this planet that we aren't meant to go. Maybe those places were meant to be left alone and unexplored because the wonders they behold aren't meant to be seen by man. And if they are, well then, those that see them must remain there, because they now know the secret, and the secret must be maintained at all costs. Well, that about does it for this episode of Parareality. Thanks for listening tonight. It's been a short episode. I didn't get as involved into the the Lake Michigan Triangle as I wanted, because I'm behind on getting episodes out, and I really wanted to get something out there for you to conclude this series and just touch the tip of the iceberg for what's really going on there in the Lake Michigan Triangle. As always, I encourage you to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. I really appreciate you listening this evening. A little something about me that you might not know is that I like to camp. I grew up going camping and fishing in southeast Alabama, and I used to do it all the time. After I got married, though, I found out that my wife doesn't really enjoy it so much. She appreciates the finer things in life, like a comfortable bed, air conditioning, and a hot shower. So as you can guess, we don't do a lot of camping. But all that changed whenever I found the getaway cabins. The getaway cabins are the best of both worlds. Think glamping. What you'll get with the getaway cabins is the equivalent of a tiny home. They're around 200 square feet, and they have everything you need for a comfortable stay in the woods. You'll have plenty of power, heat, and air conditioning, a stocked kitchen, a table, 1 or 2 very comfortable queen beds, and a bathroom with hot water. They also have a picnic table and fire pit, complete with everything you'll need to start a fire and do some outdoor open flame cooking. You can relax and unplug from the hustle and bustle of everyday life because there's no TV, and there's usually no cell phone service because of the remote location. But don't worry, there's plenty to do because the cabins are usually located close to a state park, and they also have plenty of hiking trails. They're also pet-friendly, so bring your pooch with you. My wife and I have stayed at the getaway cabins in Moss, Tennessee a couple of times, and we've had a great time while we were there. The getaway cabins are perfect for long weekends when you just need to unplug from it all. They have locations all over the country, so book your stay today. All you have to do is go to parareality.com and click on the Partnerships tab. There you'll find a link to click on and enjoy a $25 discount off your first stay. Be sure to check out their packages and discount rates for military and medical professionals as well. Once again, go to parareality.com and click on the Partnerships tab to find the link for $25 off of your first stay at the Getaway Cabins. For more information, go to getaway.house. That's getaway.house. If you'd like to leave a comment about tonight's episode of Parareality, have an idea for a topic you'd like me to cover, or a story you'd like to tell, send me an email, sandman@parareality.com, or call the Secret Bunker at 615-692-1170 and leave me a message. Don't forget that by leaving me your message, you're giving me permission to play your comment back on the podcast. Also, don't forget to follow Parareality on social media. You can find the podcast on Facebook by looking for sandman.parareality, or you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram under the username @ParaRealRadio. You can also find Parareality on YouTube under the username Parareality1, and that's Parareality with the number 1 out behind it. Parareality.com is the home of the podcast on the web, and it's also where you can find paranormal news from all around the world in the Paranews section. And you can listen to past episodes in the archives section, all for the price of absolutely nothing. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can buy yourself some swag in the official Parareality shop while you're there. You can also support the podcast for free by leaving me a 3-star or better review on whatever podcast app you're listening on. Your reviews help the podcast to grow and reach even more people, and I would appreciate it very much. I'd love to hear from you guys, so send me those emails. Thank you. Hope that you enjoyed tonight's episode of Parareality. The next episode is going to drop quick on Friday, August the 16th at 8 o'clock p.m. Central U.S. time. So make sure you tune in and find out. I got a great interview with a special guest lined up for you, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So don't forget, this coming up Friday, August 16th at 8 o'clock p.m. Central time. Everyone, I hope that this podcast opens up your mind to new ways of thinking, expands your consciousness, and produces a change in the way you see the world. If you wish to change, you must lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe. Hope that you have a wonderful evening. Hope you had a great weekend and a great week, and I will see you again this Friday. Good night, everybody.
If you wish to change, you must first lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe.
Hey, it's not over. Thanks for sticking around. I got something to tell you. Do you want to be a member of the Secret Sanctum? Well, if you do, there's only one way to do that. Somewhere on parareality.com is a link hidden in my website. And if you can find that link and click on it, you'll be granted access to the secret bunker, and you'll become a member of the Secret Sanctum. It's 100% free. It's not going to cost you anything. And once you become a member, you'll have access to some secret audio files and secret documents, some of which are exclusive only to Parareality and the members of the Secret Sanctum. You'll also get a free Parareality Secret Sanctum t-shirt. Just fill out the form and let me know what size you are, where you're located in your name, and I'll get that right out to you. So if you want to be a member of the Parareality Secret Sanctum and have access to the secret bunker, find the link.